Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a matter of great pleasure for me to welcome you here for this Navy Week media interaction. At the outset, and in keeping with the year's Navy Week theme, which is Indian Navy, combat ready, credible, cohesive force, I would like to assure the nation that as the primary manifestation of India's maritime power, the Indian Navy stands ready to fulfill its mandate to protect our national interests in the maritime domain. Before I provide you with a broad overview of the Indian Navy's major operational activities over the past year, I would like to place on record the Navy's appreciation for the role played by the media in keeping our citizens informed about naval and maritime issues, thereby contributing towards shaping a positive discourse in the country on maritime matters. The media has also been an active facilitator in our efforts to raise maritime consciousness across the board and showcase the distinct maritime nature of our nation. I also convey my heartfelt gratitude to the Navy's veteran community on behalf of all serving personnel for your service to the nation and to the Navy. I have no hesitation in declaring that the three-dimensional, networked, forward-deployed, combat-ready, credible, and cohesive force called the Indian Navy today is the result of the vision, perseverance, and hard work of our veterans. I'll be quite happy to take on any questions after my concluding remarks. As you are aware, the 4th of December each year is celebrated as the Navy Day to commemorate Indian Navy's daring attack on Karachi and our decisive victory in the 1971 Indo-Pak War. This year, however, is special as we complete 50 years of this landmark event and are celebrating it as the Swarnim Vijay Varsh. The year 2021, like the previous year, has been defined by the COVID-19 pandemic, an event that has adversely impacted nearly everyone across the globe. While we have achieved relative success against COVID, we cannot be complacent as some nations are recontemplating restrictions and lockdowns to mitigate the effects of the pandemic due to rising numbers of cases. In addition, the ongoing security situation on our northern borders has added to our security complexities. This dual challenge scenario continues as we speak, and the country collectively continues to focus its efforts to battle the pandemic, help other nations to control the effects of the pandemic, as well as to tackle our security challenges. In these testing times, the Indian Navy aims to stand steadfast in furthering our national and maritime interests. I will start with the Navy's continued efforts in the global fight against COVID. The Indian Navy, in fulfilling our responsibilities to the nation and its citizens, has continued its role of being a caregiver during the pandemic. Our naval hospital facilities were made available to the civil administrations at various places to cater for increased healthcare requirements. In support of the national effort against COVID, we also displayed innovation in manufacture of solutions like the oxygen recycling system, Navrakshak PPE and mask, multifold oxygen manifold, digital stethoscope, and smart nebulizer. In the midst of COVID's second wave, 10 naval ships under the aegis of Op Samudra Setu 2 transshipped more than 1,100 metric tons of liquid medical oxygen to India. the Indian Navy supported the government's vision of helping our friends across the seas by extending support and succor during the pandemic. Missions Sagar 3 to Sagar 7 reiterated India's commitment to the region as iron ships and aircraft provided COVID assistance to 8 friendly foreign countries across the oceans through deployment of naval medical teams, medicines, vaccines, and humanitarian aid. Despite the disruptive impact of the pandemic, the Navy has maintained its operational readiness and tempo through prompt implementation of preventive protocols. Our focus on maintaining combat and mission readiness resulted in deterring any misadventure in the maritime domain while contributing to the national COVID effort both internally and across the seas. Our mission-based deployment philosophy has enhanced the Indian Navy's presence across the region, enabling rapid responses to emerging security challenges. The Navy has established a persistent footprint in our areas of interest. Naval deployments also serve as a deterrent to inimical interests, clearly signaling the Navy's reach, capability, and intent. Our Navy also remains continuously deployed to curb maritime piracy in the Gulf of Aden. So far, 91 ships have been deployed in the region since 2008. And you would recall that due to persistent efforts of the Government of India and the Indian Navy, the Indian Ocean piracy high-risk area has been reduced substantially. In addition to anti-piracy, owing to heightened tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, our warships also remain deployed in the Gulf since June 2019, so as to reassure Indian merchant vessels transiting the region. 27 naval ships have escorted 381 Indian-flagged merchant vessels and 305 lakh tons of cargo under the aegis of Op Sankalp. Among major exercises we conducted, the TROPEX or the theatre level operational readiness exercise, wherein contingencies across the spectrum of operations were wargamed to test and validate our concept of operations, hone our warfighting skills, and bolster our efforts towards maritime security in the region. The exercise witnessed participation of all our operational ships, submarines and aircraft, as well as units of the Indian Army, Indian Air Force and the Coast Guard. As part of TROPEX, we also conducted a large-scale coastal defense exercise, Exercise Sea Vigil, involving all maritime stakeholders. I'll now speak briefly on the Indian Navy's contribution to various Government of India initiatives. Firstly, about Sagar and the Neighborhood First policy. Aligned with the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Sagar, security and growth for all in the region, the Navy participated in 22 bilateral and multilateral exercises this year. These included exercises like Varuna with the French Navy, Indra with the Russian Navy, Konkan with the Royal Navy in August, Malabar with Quad Nations in August and October, AUSINDEX with the Australian Navy in September, JIMEX with the Japanese Navy, and the most recent exercise, SITMEX with Singapore and Thailand navies in November. These exercises have contributed immensely to enhance cooperation and trust. Further, the complexity of these exercises have been increased, leading to mutual understanding and interoperability. We undertook joint EZ surveillance with Mauritius as well as coordinated patrols with Myanmar, Thailand and Indonesia. Iron ships were deployed to undertake hydrographic surveys for friendly littoral countries on their request for almost 110 days in the last year. We also handed over one Dornier aircraft to the government of Mauritius in September this year, and our hydrographic team is also part of the 42nd Indian Scientific Expedition to Antarctica to conduct surveys of Indian stations Maitri and Bharti. Our engagement with friendly foreign countries through initiatives like the Goa Maritime Conclave as well as the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue under the IONS construct aim to develop areas of convergence and cooperation, including through elements of capacity building and capability enhancement. These engagements help improve interoperability, enhance security, and affirm our commitment to be the first responder and the first port of call for our friendly maritime nations in the IOR. While we improve operational capabilities and forge closer maritime ties with our neighbors and partners, we also continue to be proactive in rendering humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. INS Kiltan provided succor to Vietnam in the aftermath of massive floods in December last year. Our helicopters conducted medical evacuation of one Malaysian and one Filipino crew of Mumbai and Kochi respectively. INS Talwar provided technical assistance to an adrift motor vessel in the Gulf of Oman. Our Dornier and ALH detachments at Maldives continue to perform crucial life-saving missions. Approximately 100 evacuation missions have been undertaken by our detachment there over the last year. The prompt response to these contingencies demonstrate our resolve to be the first responder in the region. Even at the national level, the Navy has promptly responded to all contingencies. 16 iron ships and 12 aircraft were deployed during extensive search and rescue operations during Cyclone Tote. In addition, we provided HADR assistance post Cyclone Yas off Orissa coast. Information remains a critical building block toward ensuring comprehensive maritime security in the region. In this endeavor, the Information Fusion Center at Gurgaon has established itself as the hub of maritime security information in the IOR. This has been achieved through white shipping agreements with 22 countries and one multinational construct. International liaison officers from 14 countries have been invited to join the center, out of which nine countries have already sent their liaison officers and the rest are awaited. Talking of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, as far as self-reliance in the defense sector is concerned, in building a future Navy, we remain committed to the vision of Make in India and Atmanirbharta across all domains, surface, subsurface and air. Indian Navy's commitment to Atmanirbharta is evident from the fact that of 28 ships and submarines commissioned into the Navy over the last 7 years, all have been built in India. Further, of the 39 ships and submarines currently under construction, 37 are being built at Indian shipyards. These include the aircraft carrier Vikrant, Project 15 Bravo class destroyers, Project 17 Alpha class stealth frigates, and the Scorpion class submarines. Amongst these projects, Vikrant has completed 2 sea sorties as part of the contractor sea trials. The indigenous design and construction of an aircraft carrier by the Indian Navy and the Cochin Shipyard Limited is a shining example of a quest for Atmanirbharta with more than 76% indigenous content. Visakhapatnam, the first of the Project 15 Bravo destroyers, was commissioned last month, and the remaining 3 ships of the class are likely to be delivered by 2024. Himgiri, the second of the 7 ships of the Project 17 Alpha frigates, was launched in December last year at GRSC, Calcutta. Modernization of our submarine arm is also underway. We have commissioned 4 of the 6 boats of the indigenous Scorpion class submarines. This year, we commissioned the third boat, Karanj, in March and the fourth boat, Vela, in November. The fifth boat, Wagir, has already been launched. As regards to indigenization in aviation, we inducted 9 ALH Mark III, 2 Chetaks and 2 Dornier aircraft this year. The first ALH Mark III squadron was commissioned at Goa as INAS 323 in April this year. Our Atmanirbharta initiatives are not only focused on operational platforms, but also extend to infrastructure development, which underpin our ability to undertake and support operations. The most important amongst the Navy's infrastructure project is, of course, Project Seabird at Karwar, which is progressing on track. The construction of 7 operational and 2 refit piers, creation of a full-fledged dockyard, upgrading of the hospital, and construction of a naval air station are planned during this phase. Additionally, the Navy's infrastructure plans are also focusing on our island territories, which are a springboard for our operations and enhance our sustenance and reach. Towards this end, phase 2 of the jetty expansion plan at Port Blair has already been completed in March this year. I would also like to inform you that acceptance of necessity, or the AON, exists for 72 projects worth rupees 1,97,359 crores, of which 59 projects worth 1,74,027 crores. That is almost 88% are for indigenous projects. And through these projects, we will also aim to provide as much impetus as possible to Startup India and Skill India initiatives. Coming to Startup India, in the last year, we have supported, funded and handheld more than 35 startups and MSMEs for various projects towards developing niche technologies or products for our Navy. The Navy is actively engaged in Defence Indian Startup Challenge and is encouraging Indian defence industries and startups through IDEX. 19 problem statements are being progressed through 24 startups towards fostering an ecosystem for innovation and technology development for defence applications. Additionally, 17 Technology Development Fund projects are being pursued by the Navy in partnership with DRDO for developing niche technologies that will form the kernel of equipment to be fitted on board our platforms. In order to enhance the Navy's interactions with the industry, we are actively pursuing an industry yatra through the recently established Naval Innovation and Indigenization Organization to match the existing industrial capabilities with our requirements and provide a fillip to innovation. Now, Skill India. As I've already brought out, most of our capability accretion projects are indigenous. In addition to plowing back a large portion of the naval budget back into our economy, these projects accrue numerous downstream benefits, such as employment generation in shipyards, ancillary industries and MSMEs, thereby driving the creation of a skilled workforce. Further, as a multidimensional force, our personnel imbibe significant skills during their service to the nation. In order to ensure that these skills contribute to nation building, even after they hang up their uniforms, the Navy is exploring various opportunities to support the Skill India program by conducting MOUs with various leading MNCs. Last year, we have facilitated the employment of 88 personnel to these MNCs, and MOUs have also been concluded with 2 companies through which about 100 personnel are pursuing their second career option. Towards the Digital India initiative, which aims at creation of digital infrastructure and delivering services digitally, The IN has taken great strides through implementation of Naval Communication Network Program. This state-of-the-art digital communication backbone is planned to be commissioned during the first quarter of 2022 and would provide seamless communication and delivery of digital services to naval bases spread across the country. In order to ensure that every Indian is provided with a fair opportunity to join the Navy, the INS shifted to a computer-based examination called the Indian Naval Entrance Test in February 2018. Since then, we have endeavored to conduct 2 examinations per year with an approximate participation of almost 6 to 8 lakhs candidates in each edition. The Indian Naval Civilian Entrance Test has also been structured on similar lines for recruitment of defense civilians. We have also made significant progress in implementation of Government E-Market or GEM. More than 26,000 orders worth rupees 778 crores have been placed on the GEM portal till date. For the current financial year, the Navy has already achieved more than 80% of our annual target by placing orders worth rupees 431.69 crores against an allocated amount of rupees 532 crores within the first 8 months. We intend to continue enhancing the use of GEM in our procurement processes. The INS actively participated in Sehat OPD project, which aims to provide medical teleconsultation services to all personnel and dependents of the armed forces and ECHS beneficiaries. Initially, we had nominated 75 medical officers across all commands for this project. However, with the migration of the project to NIC server, we have empaneled many more medical officers and enhanced the facility to accommodate ECHS beneficiaries as well. Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav Abhiyan. As part of commemoration of 75 glorious years of independence, the Indian Navy is undertaking numerous activities across the nation and beyond. On 15th August 21, the Indian flag was hoisted simultaneously in 4 overseas locations by our naval ships. Additionally, with an aim to promote maritime consciousness, commemorative visits are being undertaken by iron ships to 75 Indian ports, and other activities include conduct of quiz competitions spanning 118 schools, participation of Marine Commandos in skydiving demonstrations, visits to 75 islands, interactions at 75 fishing villages, sail parades at Kochi, Mumbai and Vizag, and offshore sailing race from Kochi to Goa on board INSV Maday. And based on the Honorable Prime Minister's idea, 75 sentences used in daily life were translated into Hindi, Devanagari, English and 21 other Indian languages and hosted in the Naval Intranet portal for naval personnel to gain familiarity with more number of Indian languages. Swarnim Vijay Varsh. Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav coincides with Swarnim Vijay Varsh celebrations. As a mark of solemn tribute and celebration of victory in the 71 war, 4 victory flames are being taken across the nation and Bangladesh by tri-services teams. The 4 flames are being brought back to Delhi for amalgamation into the eternal flame at the National War Memorial. A special memorial service is also being planned at the Kukri Memorial at Diu on 16th December this year. This year is also being celebrated by Bangladesh as Mujibo Barsho, marking the birth centenary of Bangladesh's father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. 2 iron ships were deployed to Mongla, Bangladesh in March this year to jointly commemorate these occasions of historical significance to both the nations. I'll now briefly touch upon recent developments in consonance with the Government of India's objective to empower women. We have taken measures towards providing additional opportunities for women officers in the Navy. Women officers have been appointed on board almost all major warships. The first woman provost officer has joined this specialization in March this year. And induction of women officers into the IT cadre will also commence from June next year. And modalities for downstream training of women as cadet entry at NDA are being worked out, and the Navy is fully prepared in all respects to induct and absorb women across a wide spectrum of roles and responsibilities. A few words are also in order about the defense reforms currently underway in India. I would like to reiterate the Navy's wholehearted support for reforms in our high defense organization and on enhancing tri-service synergy. We are looking at the establishment of the Maritime Theatre Command in the near future, which would further buttress joint planning and joint application of force in the maritime domain. The details are being worked out and may be finalized by the mid of next year. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to reiterate that despite the complex security situation in the region and the adverse impact of COVID-19, the Indian Navy as a cohesive team maintained our operational tempo and ensured security of all our maritime interests. As we move forward, it will be our endeavor to remain combat ready at all times. We will work closely with our other sister services and government agencies to ensure that our nation's security remains uncompromised. Our commitment to Atmanirbhar Bharat will be reinforced by indigenization of major equipment and systems through multiple avenues, including the flagship Make in India campaign. We will continue with our sustained efforts to support the national initiatives such as Digital India, Skill India, Startup India, and other GOI initiatives. Indian Navy is also conscious of its role and responsibility as the premier maritime force in the region. In keeping with the Honorable Prime Minister's vision for the Indo-Pacific region, Sagar, security and growth for all in the region, the Navy will remain at the forefront of cooperative engagements founded on a free, open, inclusive and rules-based approach to regional maritime security. On behalf of all uniformed and civilian personnel of the Indian Navy, I take this opportunity to convey my best wishes to our countrymen on the occasion of Navy Day. Finally, I would like to thank the Government of India for giving me the honor and privilege of leading this fine service. Lord Napier's words are apt and relevant that, I quote, a man who commands an army, in this case I would say the Navy, cannot succeed unless his whole mind is thrust into his work. The great art of commanding is to take a fair share of the work. The more trouble, the more labor must be given. The more danger, the more pluck must be shown until everything is overpowered. Unquote. I will follow this fully. My aim is to build on the legacy of my predecessors without any disruptive changes, whilst at the same time seeking disruptive technology to find better ways of doing a job at sea. Our focus will be ships first, so that the operational units and the personnel manning them are empowered, enabled and supported to the hilt. Jai Hind, Shana Varan.
You have worked in the IDS in its DMA in its initial days. How do you see the future of armed forces working together in an integrated manner? Thank you, sir.
Okay, is there anybody who wants to ask any question related to DMA? Yeah, please.
Please wait for the mic.
No.
Mic is coming to you.
related to DMA.
Yes, sir. So
Okay.
you said the Maritime Theatre Command will be rolled out by middle of next year. In your role as CISC and now, former role as CISC and now as Navy Chief, if you could just tell us what are the challenges which the armed forces are encountering on the road to theaterization, sir?
You have asked about Maritime Theatre Command, so and the Theatre Command, that I'll come to subsequently, okay? I told you that I want to take forward the legacy of my predecessors. The theme of Indian Navy, a combat-ready, credible and cohesive force, is what we'll be taking forward. Now, in this regard, my approach is of ships first. Why ships? Because the Navy symbolizes ships, just like aircraft represents the Air Force. The Navy is symbolized by ship. And the word ship is very important for us. If you look at the usage of the word ship, it is quite interesting. When we pray to God, it is worship. When we study, you have scholarship, sportsmanship, apprenticeship, internship. We are all citizens of India. There is citizenship. As far as media is concerned, you are concerned about viewership, readership. So you have ship there also. As we grow up, we enter into relationship, courtship, partnerships. As we grow further, older, we are worried about membership, chairmanship, leadership. And we are all very conscious of ownership of our data, of our information, of our media bytes and so on. The only one ship which I don't want in my Navy, in the Indian Navy, and which I have already decommissioned is one-upmanship. So I just want to highlight that the word ship is very important, not just to the Navy, but also to each one of us. We use it in many ways, and I have put particular thrust on this, and each of these letters I have elaborated for the Navy. Like S stands for ships first, H for happy teams, I for infrastructure and housing, P for a positive, proactive approach, S for safety and security, F for fit, fair and fearless, I for being imaginative and industrious, R for being responsive and relentless, S for steadfast in support, and T for timeliness in action. So this is what I have is my message to the Navy, and I'm looking at, as I told you, finding different ways of fighting, induction of modern technology, disruptive technologies, and so on. Coming to the second part of the question, where you asked about the DMA, I think this is the single most important higher defense organization reform that has happened in our military since independence. The creation of the CDS, of the post of CDS, and the creation of the DMA. What are the benefits? It facilitates orientation, participation, and contribution to nation building effort. There is clear dissemination of the national policy objectives to the military. There is greater awareness of the national challenges. There is direct responsibility and accountability to the political executive, faster decisions, faster approvals, much reduced processing time, handling of subjects by subject matter experts, and fewer layers of bureaucracy. So I'm all for it, and I find that the DMA has really made a substantial difference to the way the armed forces process issues at headquarters.
Manas.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Manas from Press Trust of India, PTI. So you briefly mentioned about the Indo-Pacific. My question is that Indo-Pacific has been witnessing strategic competition, intense strategic competition in the last few years. Almost all the countries globally who are key players have come out with their vision for Indo-Pacific. So in the backdrop of China's growing interference and muscle flexing in Indo-Pacific, how do you see the overall situation and the challenges for Indian Navy in Indo-Pacific? And in fact, when do you plan to have an Indian Navy with 170 ships? Because China currently has around 355 frontline ships, and it is now reportedly the biggest navy in the world. It has close to 400 ships, but frontline ships it has 355. So when do you plan to achieve the target of 170 ships? Any deadline? And how do you see the overall situation in Indo-Pacific?
The Indo-Pacific is got great importance for us. We have over $200 billion of trade passing through these waters. We have a lot of our diaspora staying in these littorals. So the importance just cannot be underscored. The Navy over a period of time has evolved from a small navy of 33 ships to what it is today. It is a potent, well-balanced and capable force. We do not look at the bean counting, and we do not look at capability developments against any particular country. We develop a capability based upon our maritime interests and our and so therefore our planning, our preparedness, everything is to ensure how we preserve, promote and protect our maritime interests. So towards this, there are these capability development plans which are in place, and we had a maritime capability development MCPP for 2012 to 2027. But now, since the creation of the CDS and the DMA, I have been there in HQIDS. We have worked out a system called the Integrated Capability Development System, which is intended to develop the plans for the development of capability. I'll just briefly explain to you about this. It is a scientific process. It is based on environment scan, based on net assessment, and the national military objectives, the subordinate military objectives. All this provide the inputs, and based on the inputs, the military strategy is worked out. Based upon the strategy, you work out what is the missions and what are your capabilities that are to be derived for the missions. And thereafter, from this, you work out the capability gaps, and then from the capability gaps and the successional capabilities that are being factored, you develop the requirements. Then you do a financial mapping and prioritization, both intra-service as well as inter-service. And from this, you arrive at the deliverables. So what are the deliverables in this? The 10-year ICDP, it is called Integrated Capability Development Plan, a 5-year acquisition plan, and a 2-year roll-on annual acquisition plan. So with these plans being developed, they are put up to the authorities for approval, to the apex leadership, where the budget is matched with the plans, and in case there are still any capability gaps, then mitigating strategies are worked out in terms of diplomatic, economic, and so on. So that is the rough process, and with this, once this process is already underway since the last year, and it is expected to be completed by, say, the middle of next year or towards the end of next year. All the three services are factoring their plans. There are teams from each capability development directorate of all the three services which are working on it. And once this plan is finalized, then we look at the numbers and the capability that will accrue to each service. Okay?
Mukesh
Good
Kaushik.
afternoon.
Sir, this is Mukesh Kaushik from Dainik Bhaskar.
Yeah.
My question pertains to an inquiry going on by CBI. CBI arrested 3 Navy officers on 26th September, if I'm not wrong. And then subsequently, even Navy instituted an internal inquiry to go into the case of leakages of information, which was understood to be with the submarine program of Indian Navy. Can you tell us the status of this case, and secondly, what you're doing to plug these leakages?
आपने जैसे बोला है that ये सही है, एक CBI का कुछ इंक्वायरी चल रहा है इसके बारे में, and they have asked us also for our cooperation. The Navy is cooperating fully. Navy का भी एक इंक्वायरी अभी उसके साथ चल रहा है, तो दोनों इंक्वायरी साथ साथ चल रहे हैं, दोनों प्रोसेस आर ऑन. So we'll await the findings of it. It is premature to comment on it now. Okay?
Ashish.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Ashish. I have a similar question on the topic that Manas asked on the Chinese capability. Sir, in terms of number of platforms, where do you see Indian Navy vis-a-vis China? Also, in a different manner, in case the clash happens, in case the situation arises of a two-front war. So, in terms of number, we are not close to Pakistan plus Chinese Navy put together. So, where do you see this? Specifically, I'm asking in terms of number of platforms.
We are aware of the developments of the PLA, the Chinese Navy. They have built over 138 ships in the last 10 years, which roughly translates to about 13 to 14 combat platforms every year. Every nation is entitled to have its own capability development and vision, and developing the plans towards that. We keep an eye on all developments in our area. Our plans, our capability development, our preparedness, our acquisition, all this will factor the ongoing activities and the deployments in the IOR. So the PLA Navy has been present in the IOR since 2008. We have been watching them. It is not, I would say, all about numbers. In fact, I want to tell you, there was a Spartan father to whom his son asked. He told him, "Father, my sword is too short." So the father's reply was, "Add a step to it." So what I'm trying to say is that it is not just the numbers alone which matter. It is that it is the people behind it, how you exploit the weapons that you have, your strategy, your operational plans. So all this, the amount of effort that you can bring to bear at a particular point. So there are a whole lot of issues involved in this. But I want to assure you that the Indian Navy is a well-balanced force, and we are confident of defending India's maritime interests for sure.
Rahul Singh.
Good afternoon, sir. Rahul Singh this side, sir, from Hindustan Times.
Yeah.
So, you talked about modernization, the platforms which you're planning to induct to stay, ready all the time. So my question is, at a time when we are looking at a budget squeeze, the budget is under pressure, the Navy's share of the defense budget has been consistently declining over the last 10 years. So how do you tend to make up for the shortage of funds and, also balance out your modernization requirements? And so the second question is related to the theaterization thing. So this is, you said that the Maritime Theatre Command would roll out by the middle of next year. So if you could give us a sense of, how's the overall theaterization plan progressing? Are there any hurdles? There were some concerns raised by the IIF. Has all of that been sorted out? And when do we look at
you
these?
to restrict to one question, sir.
I mean, that's the question which I asked before. Thank you, sir.
Shall I answer you on the theaterization, which is what you asked earlier also? Budget? Okay. I had explained the ICATS process earlier. So how the capability development is being developed is handled jointly, is intricately linked to this budget. So this process is already on, and I told you where the budget and the capability required is matched. You decide whether there is a shortfall and is there a capability gap. And if that capability gap exists, then if you are not able to fund it, then we look at other mitigating strategies. There are risk mitigation measures that we take in terms of diplomatic, economic, and political, and so on. So, cultural and all these various aspects. So, so that is the way the capability development is being looked at. I feel that as of now, we have been able to focus on the money that is allotted to us. We have looked at our priorities, and we have been able to move in the direction that we want with regard to modernization so far. Coming to the issue of theaterization, I was involved in the initial studies in my previous job as the CISC. I want to tell you that joiners and integration, is not something which can happen in a very, very short time. If you look at what has happened in the case of the US military, it has taken almost 50 years. The thrust for joiners in the US military, you may be aware, happened after the Pearl Harbor attack. At Pearl Harbor, at that point of time, there was a commanding general ashore and there was a commanding admiral afloat. And both these people took orders from their respective headquarters in Washington. So, and you're aware of the consequences, and the outcome of that led to this thrust on joiners, integration, and unified commands and so on. But it's taken a long time for them. I'm not saying that we should take a similar time, but it's a complicated process. It is not something which can just be put together in a very short time. So first we ordered a study on this, initial study, which had been completed, which gave its recommendation, and thereafter a detailed study was done. This had to be tried out in war games and in tabletop exercises. So there was a plan in 3 stages to try out the structures and the recommendations that were given by the board. We had completed before I left, and we had completed the first stage, and subsequently I am aware that the second stage is also done. Probably we are in the 3rd stage of the wargaming process. As I understand, a new a 3rd study to take this forward has already been ordered by the DMA, and we are all working towards this. In a nutshell, I would say that we are looking at the Maritime Theatre Command, where largely the command structures will remain in place with a lean theatre command organization on top of it. The charter of this theatre commander will largely be operationals with very, very limited ADAM or maintenance tasks. So therefore, it will be a lean organization superimposed on that. And when you look at the tasking, the The chief will therefore probably at some point in time will be responsible only for raise, train and sustain functions, while the operational aspects will all be handled by this theatre commander. But certainly the chief will be in the loop for operations as well, because he will be part of the COSC. So this is the sort of broad contours that we're looking at. It may happen in 6 months, it may take a little longer. So the time frame will depend upon how we resolve the complexities involved and the nitty-gritties of the theatre command. Okay.
Colonel Ajay.
Good morning, sir. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to ask a question in your first press conference. I have two follow-on questions, no new one. I return to the question of maritime capability perspective plan. You recounted the process of arriving at the answer of 170 ships. This was exactly the same process that was followed when the earlier plan was made, and it arrived at a figure of 200 ships needed for the Navy. I hope we are not sort of starting with the question, starting with the answer and then arriving at a suitable question to sort of follow the answer, because it's still not been adequately made clear to us how we have come to a figure that is 30 ships less than the actual earlier figure. That's a massive drop in capability. This and that it seems to be including the IAC-2 as well, based on the remarks made by the CDS at an earlier sort of question. Could you just sort of tell us how you sort of managed to make do within what you have? The other follow-on question relates to the alliances and partnerships in the Indo-Pacific.
So may I request that you answer one question at a time, sir?
There are two half questions.
So we'll come back to you, sir, and then we can.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
I never said that we have arrived at 170 ships by any process. I only explained to you the process of ICATS by which we are working out the capability development. I think you have sort of assumed that I have said it is 170. It might be 230, it may be 300. We do not know. The process is on. Okay? And unlike the, what I'm trying to say is that unlike the earlier time, this is a very, very scientific process. It's a process which is being followed by many of the advanced nations as well. There is simulation studies involved. There is net assessment. There is environmental scan, and it's a fairly detailed scientific process with lot of granularity involved, and all the three capability development teams are fully involved in it, and at each stage it is discussed at the vice chief's level, and then it is brought to the COSC, and thereafter each stage moves forward. So it's a fairly elaborate and systematic process. So this process is on. As I said, it has taken about a year and a half, year plus now, and it might take a little bit longer. So then we will arrive at, I can give you an example that when we did a scientific study like this, many years earlier, there was a requirement which was projected for the air defense missiles, which was almost 90,000 in number when it was collated for all the three services. But when we went through a process like the ICATS with simulation studies and great details, it came down to almost 40,000 or around that figure. So what I am trying to tell you is we are bringing scientific rigor to the process to make sure that we get the bang for the buck.
Ajay Banerjee.
Sir, good morning. Sir, to your right. I'm Ajay Banerjee. I work with the Tribune, and congratulations on taking over as Navy Chief. Sir, two small little clarifications. When you talk of this 170 ship Navy, are you hinting that the number could go up? One little clarification only. Could the number go up from 170? And secondly, sir, are you going to increase the deployment along the straits which are east of us towards China? We already have the MALDEPs in several of the states. Are you going to increase the number of MALDEPs, or you increase the number of patrolling in these stretches?
I'll reiterate again that I'm not talking numbers now at all. So the numbers could come down, numbers could go up. Okay, the process is on. So once the process, works out, it also factors, the capability of each platform. Sometimes there are platforms which have much more capability than, a whole lot of ships put together. So that is why the process is on, and once it gets a stage of culmination and we arrive at the 10-year ICDP, that is the time we will come to know what you are looking at. And incidentally, why are we looking at a 10-year plan instead of a 15-year plan? Earlier we had a 15-year plan. That is because of the rapid change of technology. So we felt that a 15-year plan gets obsolete faster. So therefore we have brought it down to a 10-year plan on which we do our studies and work out the details.
Siddhant.
Yeah, we are undertaking our mission-based deployments, and we are keeping our areas of interest under constant surveillance. Wherever the presence is required, we augment the presence from time to time. Okay?
Siddhant.
Hi Sam, Siddhant from Beyond. My question is, how much is the worry regarding increased Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean region, and also what we are seeing with Pakistan and China? There have been reports about the Chinese giving submarines and ships to Pakistan. How much this in totality is a worry in the Indian Ocean region, and what the Indian Navy is going to do when it comes to countering this?
I thought I'd covered this earlier. The Chinese Navy has been present in the Indian Ocean since 2008. On an average, they have sometimes they have about 7 ships in the IOR, sometimes about 3 ships. Their submarines do come to our waters. Our waters, in the sense, in the Indian Ocean region, they do operate. We keep track of them. We keep track of their deployments. We keep track of what they do. We have our plans in place. We keep them. We have fairly good domain awareness in these waters. There is constant surveillance by our aircraft and our mission-based deployed ships. So their activities and deployments are kept under close watch.
Mr. Baranwal.
Good afternoon, sir. Congratulations on taking over as Chief of Naval Staff. How do you wish to see the Navy you are going to lead in terms of capabilities and in terms of human assets? And if I can also ask you, can you give us a little bit status update on the armed drones contract, and also how longer is it going to take for IAC-2? Thank you.
So you have asked 3 questions in one go. I'll request you to limit.
Thank you so much.
Our personnel are our chief assets. We are getting the best of personnel. We train them well, and we are quite happy with the quality of personnel that we get. The women officers who join us are also of very high quality, and they have been doing the job at par with the best of personnel working with us as my shipmates. Another question?
So there was respect to the progress of armed drones.
We have an ongoing case for the procurement of surveillance drones. The roadmap for unmanned systems has recently been approved and promulgated. It's a 10-year roadmap. We are working on it. Our plan is to have indigenous development of unmanned systems, autonomous airborne systems, autonomous surface vessels, autonomous underwater systems, and so on. So the plans are on for that, and we are giving a lot of thrust to having it developed in India.
We'll have one last question, Ms. Poonam Pandey.
सर मैं पूनम
Sir,
पांडे
please,
हूँ नाव भारत टाइम्स से। सर एलएसी में जब पिछले साल हालात ख़राब होने लगे और एक वक्त में तनाव चरम पर था, हेयर सर
Okay.
एलएसी में जिस वक्त एकदम पीक में टेंशन था लास्ट ईयर, उस समय और अब में इंडियन ओशन रीजन में किस तरीके से हालात बदले हैं, क्या चेंज तब और अब में दिखाई दे रहा है, और सर थर्ड एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर की इंडियन नेवी को कितनी ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है, या सिर्फ शिप्स और सबमरीन पे फिलहाल फोकस करके काम चल जाएगा?
देखिए ये जैसे नॉर्दर्न बॉर्डर्स में प्रॉब्लम था तो हमारे शिप्स डिप्लॉय किए गए थे, वो मिशन बेस्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट्स में फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉय हो गए थे, और बाकी जितने शिप्स हैं वो तैयार भी थे अगर सिचुएशन एस्केलेट होगा तो। वी हैड केप्ट their ships under close surveillance, which we continue to do even now. Any of the ships coming on deployment, we keep a watch on them. We maintain fairly good maritime domain awareness in our area of responsibility. The aircraft carriers, see the aircraft carrier brings a particular type of capability to the Navy. You know, it gives you strike power, it gives you air defense capability, it gives you surveillance capability. Whole lot of capability is given when you have aircraft carrier in company, and therefore it protects the assets of the Navy at sea. The submarines bring in a different capability, you know, of sea denial and stealth and so on. In a Navy like the Indian Navy, you have to have a right balance of surface ships, submarines and aircraft, and that is what we are intending to do. We are developing our plans as per the ICDP I told you, and that will decide as to what are the right mix of ships, submarines and aircraft. It is not a either or, you know, it is a capability that we have to have.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please join us. Ma'am.
I'm often told I'm loud enough, so I don't need a mic. Sir, good afternoon, and many congratulations for taking over.
Thank you.
Given the worries about Omicron presently, sir, has the Indian Navy instituted any SOPs as far as its personnel is concerned? We know what happened in the second wave, so any assets which are on standby, etc.
We have, you know, during the second wave, I must tell you that we had managed it quite well. And we were then seeing the issues that came up during the second wave. We had prepared ahead for the third wave. So the Ministry of Defense, the Honorable RM was kind enough to approve emergency pass for the armed forces to prepare to combat the second wave as well as the third wave. So as a result, almost all our hospitals have now been enhanced with the oxygen piping. We have set up medical oxygen plants. We have set up the medical cryogenic oxygen tanks, increased number of ventilators for children, the stocks of medicines, training of battlefield nursing assistants. So all that has been done to prepare and counter and mitigate a third wave in case we are required to. And as such, we are worried about the safety of our personnel on the combat platforms. So therefore, the protocols have really not been eased, and this has been a challenge for our personnel, because our personnel have been staying on ships without stepping ashore for for their own personal time, etc. We permit them to go on leave, and thereafter when they come back, we put them in under observation. We test them, and only when they are proved safe, we allow them to come on board, so that the operational capability does not get affected. So we will be continuing that till the time the new Omicron strain threat is ruled out.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now please request you to join us for lunch.